Hey, welcome back. There's a topic I think we need to discuss that doesn't get enough attention, and it's this. We can be our own worst enemies, and it really is a preventable thing that we just have to change our mindset. Look at the big picture and think about the other guy, at least a little bit. The other day I was at a non-towered airport, big place in a rural environment, a great airport that I go to often, terrific restaurant on the field. But I noticed something there that caught my eye, and I hope it catches yours too. Now let's preface this by saying there's a connection between the cost of aviation and how we conduct ourselves. The more accidents there are, the more payouts there are, the higher our insurance costs are. That's largely within our control, but it has to be a conscious decision on our part. There's also the issue of negative publicity. You've noticed this for sure. Whenever there's an aircraft accident or even an incident, it makes the news. It's in the paper, it's on TV, people talk about it, and usually it's people who don't really understand what was going on. But the perception becomes that aviation is maybe unsafe, maybe not someplace you want your family to be involved, and that is not good for the industry as a whole or us as individuals. Keep in mind, whenever we're in the airplane, as pilot in command, we're responsible for what happens on that flight. We're responsible for all of it. So let's consider this situation and think about what you might have done, and more importantly, why. Now here's the scenario. We're at a rural, non-towered airport with 4 runways. Plenty big, absolutely great, all the facilities we need. We've got runway 1 and 19 that oppose each other. We've got runways 14 and 32 also opposing each other. These runways intersect about 2/3 of the way down. An intersection is an intersection, and whether we're on a car or a motorcycle or an airplane, we have to think about what that means to us. Here's the weather condition. It's clear day, absolutely beautiful. Winds are 300 at 9. So as we come into the airport to arrive, or as we're preparing to depart, we have to consider which runway are we going to use and why are we going to use that particular runway. Now, given the winds, runway 32 is the obvious choice. It has the best headwind, it has the least crosswind. Runway 1's not a bad choice either. A little bit more of a crosswind, a little bit less of a headwind, but if I was working with a student on crosswind technique, that might be a really good choice. Runway 19, not a spectacular choice. It's got an 8-knot crosswind, but it's got a 3-knot tailwind. We don't really want a tailwind if we can prevent ourselves from getting in that position. Runway 14, the worst of the 4 choices. It's got the highest tailwind, 8 knots. If we were flying a common training aircraft with an approach speed of maybe 60 knots, that's the difference between 52-knot ground speed and 68-knot ground speed. That's a 16-knot difference, and that is worth getting our attention. Take a look at this. This is the leaderboard at the FBO office that shows us the aircraft taking off and landing. And if you'll notice right here, 3 runways are in use over a relatively short period of time. Here we have an indication it was Cessna Cardinal landing on runway 32. Just 1 minute later, a Mooney takes off on runway 1. Those are not opposing runways, but those runways do intersect. And with only 1 minute between them, that means they were both in a position to see the other and possibly have a conflict. But they chose to use runways that intersect, raising the risk unnecessarily for both aircraft. Here we have an experimental aircraft that took off on runway 19. Just 2 minutes later, a Cherokee took off on runway 1. Those runways oppose each other, 2 minutes apart, which suggests both aircraft were on the ground doing their run-up at their respective starting points, knowing that the other one was at the other end, intending to go in the other direction. Now, I'm not saying anybody did anything wrong here. I'm not saying there should be any kind of action taken against any of these pilots. But thinking about it, which runway would you use and why? And knowing that somebody else is using an opposing runway or an intersecting runway at the same time, why would you persist in doing what you had planned to do? Look, there's a lot of reasons these choices might have been made, and they may be perfectly good choices. But when we're using opposing runways, within a short time frame. When we're using intersecting runways knowingly within a very short time frame, the odds are somewhere, someday, there's going to be an issue. Think of it like this. What if these weren't runways? What if they were roads? It's a rural area. There's not a lot of traffic. Cars just go down there every few minutes. It's not a long line of unending traffic. But there's no stop sign at the intersection between these two roads, and there's no yield sign. Most of the time, that's going to work out okay. But eventually, two cars are going to end up on the same path at the same time and meet that intersection right when the other car does. That's when we have a tragedy. We can prevent this. We really can. As pilots in command, we have choices to make on our flights, and it's not what's most convenient for me in all cases. There are circumstances where I might say, you know what, runway 32 is the best choice, but there's other aircraft using runway 1, maybe working on crosswind technique, so I'm going to use runway 1 because I still have a little bit of a headwind. I don't have much of a crosswind. I can handle this, and we'll all be using the same runway and the same pattern, increasing safety. The moment I decide I'm going to use a different runway for my convenience, or I'm on a different game plan and I'm going to do something completely different than the bulk of the other pilots, I'm increasing the risk of what's happening at this airport. And there's no way around that. That's on me. I made that choice. And if something happens, well, I'm the one who made it happen. Aviation is a remarkable endeavor. It can be incredibly safe, but it only works out that way if we decide that we're going to conduct ourselves safely. The moment we decide that what we want, that our preference, is so important that it's worth risking somebody else's safety, maybe we need to rethink that position. Thanks so much for being here. I really appreciate it. Y'all have been doing a wonderful job growing this community. We've doubled our subscribers just in the last month, and I hope that happens again. And it's all because of you. So thanks so much. Please click like here below the video. Share this on your social media if you would. Subscribe to the channel. And most important of all, leave a comment below. What's your perspective on using multiple runways at non-towered airports simultaneously? What do you think about that? I'm curious.